A lot of really good stuff has already been said about ChatGPT destroying education. Just think about it. It's already writing papers. It can write a paper better than I can write a paper from scratch, and it can do it in about 2 seconds. And students are learning that, and they're knowing that it can do that really, really effectively. It can also write discussion boards. You can just tell it your perspective, and ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever tool you're using can write it a whole lot better than a lot of other people can write it. And yeah, you might be able to tell it's written by ChatGPT, but the fact that it can do that shows that it's very effective at what it does. It's kind of destroying that part of education. It can do research really well. I think about how quickly Gemini can do a deep research and grab a bunch of different thoughts and patterns and backgrounds and come up with a bunch of different sources and effectively do research a lot better than I ever could. Last thing I'm thinking education of, this is just off the top of my head, is I think it's just dumbing people down in general. So yeah, we could sit and we could talk about how ChatGPT is doing all this different stuff and damaging education. But at its core, I really believe this. I'm not just being controversial or trying to get clickbait. I really think that ChatGPT is actually going to do a lot of good for education. And not just do good, I think it's going to end up saving education in the real sense of the word. So what am I talking about? Well, let's take a look at the definition of education. Education is the act or the process of imparting or acquiring general knowledge. That's one definition. Another one is developing the powers of reasoning and judgment. And another one is generally of preparing oneself or others for intellectually for a mature life. So if you go with that definition of education, then what in the world are we doing in colleges and in high school? I'm not attacking elementary education just yet. Think about it. Education is not just writing papers or cramming for tests. If that was education, then yeah, we'd be doing a great job. But obviously education is failing because just because you can write a paper does not mean you're educated. And just because you cram for a test and get all the answers and then forget them a week later also does not mean that you're educated. And yet we have dumbed down education to mean, can you pass this test and can you write a paper? And of course, there's a bunch of different ins and outs and things that don't necessarily always mean that. I get that. But in general, I feel like education, once you get to high school, once you get to college, and later on, is all about writing papers and cramming for a test. Now, education has consistently had 2 parts. Throughout world history, you can look at it, and even if you just were going to learn any topic, you have the starting point where you learn in the classroom and you learn what you're about to go do, and then you go do it. So for example, if I'm going to learn how to do a jackhammer, I need to know what a jackhammer is. I need to know some safety procedure. I need to know how to turn it on. I need to know how to plug it in, what type of power it needs. I just need to know some general stuff. And then I need to go do it. I can't just go do it without education, or I'm going to learn really the hard way. And I can't just have all the education and learn in a classroom and have it perfected without actually putting my hands on it. You have to have both parts. And Eastern education is really good at the hands-on part of it. Western education has gotten really good at the classroom part of it. And by really good, I mean that's pretty much all we do. When you think of education, you think of sitting in a classroom, in a desk, listening to a lecture, taking notes, and preparing to be tested on this knowledge. And by having this knowledge, you're just naturally going to be better. So that's the modern definition of education. But before we think about it, I want to be very clear up front. I'm very much against academia. I think it's kind of dumb. I think it's kind of stupid. And so this is my anti-academia bias disclosure, just letting you know that. Coming back to education in just a second. AI has 2 uses. One is it can author something, or 2, it can be used as a tool. Let me explain just a little bit. So authorship would be writing a paper. Being used as a tool would be finding data points or researching or finding sources that you can further dive into. So those are its 2 uses. For example, it could create a video from scratch. That would be authorship. And it's probably not going to be very good at that part of it. Or AI subtitles can generate subtitles for this entire video in about 10 to 15 seconds. And they're going to be pretty accurate. I can go through, I can check it, and it's amazing. That is an incredible use of AI. Using AI as a tool can make you so much faster. It can do so much. But it can't make the video from scratch, at least not yet. And I still don't think it'll be able to do that as well as a human could. So if those are your 2 uses of AI, authorship and as a tool, what is AI doing for education? Well, when you try and use it for authorship, of course, it's not going to do as well. But when you use it as a tool, it's an accelerator. And the way students are using it is as authorship, which means that the way they're learning is trying to be an author of something. And so the thing that AI is replacing is the thing that students can use it for. And teachers can't stop them because they can't detect it. Or if they can detect it, they're still, the fact that you can do the work and do it effectively by just letting AI do it means that it's bad work to do in the first place. Anything that AI can easily replace is something that a human doesn't necessarily have to be educated to do. So if you go back to education, a lot of it, high school and college especially, is just about doing grunt work, about researching something, writing a paper, reading this book on it, doing this, doing that, filling out this discussion board, trying to think creatively about it or something, but it's not actually learning. It's just doing a bunch of grunt work that has checks and balances. And I get the point of it, because you can tell someone to read a book, but then they're not going to do it. So then you test them on it to make sure they read it, but now they're just skimming it, and it's not effective either way, because the desire to learn is not accounted for. If I read a book and I want to learn something from it, I'm going to learn something from it. But if you force someone to read something, they're not going to learn it as well. And then you find the dilemma of education. How do you get someone to realize that by doing math, they're actually going to get better in the short term or in the long term? And it's not going to be fun trying to figure out how to solve just a basic subtraction equation. But once you learn how to do it, then you're going to be a lot better in life. So there is a little bit of the desire to learn. You can't just always have a desire to learn. Not every student is going to have a desire to learn. But the best way to learn is by having a desire for it. And so we've tried to correct that, and we've created a system where you don't have to have a desire to learn. You're just forced to go through this checklist, and once you go through that checklist, then you're educated. But by doing that, we've lost the passion of learning. Now teachers are teaching in a way that's not actually effective, and students aren't learning anything. And so we've got the best of both worlds. Absolutely nothing effective. A lot of this is from my experience. So this is from my experience going through high school and going through college, and I had some pretty good, what I would say, education. I had great teachers, I had a great curriculum, and I think I did learn a good bit. But in essence, what I hear from other people, and the people who especially are not having a desire to learn, is that the way education works overall is just not effective. Because think about it. If I have a broken bone and my arm is just hanging here and it's snapped, and someone puts a Band-Aid on it, it may be a very beautiful Band-Aid, and that Band-Aid may be amazing, and it may be great, but the bone's still broken. And so education, there's a lot of beautiful Band-Aids. There's some amazing teachers, there's some amazing ways to go learning, there's some amazing field trips and hands-on learning, but the overall problem is broken. The way education is designed and standardized testing and just the whole idea of it all being in a classroom is just ridiculous. And so there's some beauty in there. There's some amazing Band-Aids. I don't want to diminish the people doing great work because the system is broken and they can't fix that. I can't necessarily fix it. But I also want to point out that it is broken. So take, for example, one of the best ways to learn. For me, I know everyone learns in a slightly different way. The best way for me to learn about a field is, of course, to do it, but also to read. And so, for example, I think of the most recent book I read. It was a book about James Cameron, filmmaker who made Avatar and Titanic. I got to read all about his early life and how he was tenacious, how he had a lot of grit, how he was just creative. He just was a go-getter. He turned a lot of people off, ticked a lot of people off, but he got stuff done. And because of that, he progressed up the ranks. And I got to learn a lot of cool little details about his life. And naturally, I just am inspired, and I learned a lot about it. And I learned a whole lot because I was interested in a topic. I'm fascinated by filmmaking, so if I read a book about a filmmaker, I'm going to be fascinated by it. And that's one of the best ways to learn. But if you were to do the same thing and try and get me to read it and then test me on it, just because I can't tell you what date Terminator 2 came out doesn't mean I didn't read it and learn from it. And so by coming up with a way to test that's based on specific answers is not actually effective. And I realize standardized testing has tried to fix that recently by trying to interpret data and trying to figure out how someone is thinking about it, but it's still flawed because you're trying to do something that's not in the real world. Now, if you tell me, this is an example, that I need to memorize what hex code a certain blue is on the color wheel, I'm probably not going to memorize that hex code. But if I have to do it every single day for work, you better bet I'm going to memorize it. And schools are trying to get people to memorize a certain hex code, a certain thing, a certain date, a certain person who invented something, and then write a paper on it and learn about it. And it's not effective because it's not going to apply to someone's life. And so education is failing us in that way. So that gets us back to ChatGPT, education's savior, because education is realizing that it's really bad at its job. And if ChatGPT can do what a student is being told they need to do, then that's bad education. And now, education is about to have to improve. ChatGPT is forcing it to improve. And of course, we're not going to see a lot of radical change. We're going to see a bunch of dumb people react in dumb ways that are going to lead to even more dumb education. But there is a chance that people are learning that they don't learn by just writing a paper. They don't learn by just cramming for a test. And we have a moment, we have a chance where for a second, education could actually get improved. It could actually be saved just a little bit because of ChatGPT and because of the way AI is moving education. I'm thinking about something I had to do recently. It wasn't even for a degree. It was in order to volunteer at this organization, I had to do a background check and I had to do training on mandatory reporting. And it was a cute little online thing that you could learn through. It was not designed for learning. It had some PowerPoints, it had some videos to watch. You could put to 2.5 speed. It had some really quick little answers, and you get tested on it. And it was a course. It existed. And the way that it was completely ineffective, the way that it did not teach me anything unless I really wanted to learn, and I was not passionate about learning all the different codes and stuff about Georgia and the way it works. And I mean, sure, I did enough to pass the quiz, and I maybe learned just a little bit, but it was just ultimately an ineffective document, an ineffective way of learning, because it was online, because there was no passion behind it, and because the student had no desire to learn. So ultimately, altogether, it was a failure of education, of educating me. And I compare that to what I think is the greatest education experience I've ever had. And that was what the camp I worked for called Staff Training Week. And Staff Training Week is incredible. You get to experience something, you get to have a little bit of classroom instruction, you get to apply it and practice it, you get to watch people do it. And you, by the end of that week, are an absolute trained kid expert. You can lead anything with kids, and you have the energy, you have the confidence, and you have the tools in order to get it done. But this 1 week starts getting planned for a year in advance. There's a team of people that work for months, week after week, meeting once a week for 2 hours, doing all this planning, doing all sorts of ways to make it interactive, changing it every single year. It's not copy and paste. And yet it is one of the most effective ways to learn that I've ever been a part of. And compare that to mandatory reporter training, just some random online course. The whole way of doing it is completely ineffective. But here's the thing, ChatGPT, no AI bot could come close to doing anything like Staff Training Week. It's not possible. You can't have a robot give you a high five. You can't have a robot speak compellingly from stage and then talk with you afterwards about how it applied. You can't have a robot put you in a scenario. You can't have a bunch of words pressed together and calculated a certain way teach you how to console a crying camper. You can't do that. It's not possible. And I think the fact that AI can't do something means it's effective education. And I wonder if classrooms and if teachers were able to go back to their roots and be able to teach something in the best way possible, have a little bit of classroom instruction, explain it, and then go do it, and be able to show it, and be able to do it practically, I think there might be a chance that education gets a little bit better. ChatGPT is eliminating the dumb parts of education. It's forcing it to evolve, because now we have access to every bit of information in the world. We have access to everything. We can learn anything by just looking up a YouTube video. There's really no paywall access to anything. Yeah, in order to get a detailed, complete education, you need to do a little bit of payment or work with somebody or get close to somebody in order to learn the weeds of it. That's what I think education is. But in order to just get basic knowledge, anyone can do that. And basic knowledge, when it comes down to it, isn't really that effective. You can hear everything in the world, you can know everything in the world, but if you don't do anything with it, it's not going to do any good. A wise teacher once talked about all of the knowledge you could have. You could hear all the things he was saying, and he said it's like you just built your house, and then you could also hear everything that you're saying and do it, and it's also like building a house, but it's like building it on a rock, and this other one is like building it on sand. But the thing is, you don't tell a difference. You can't tell a difference between someone who's just hearing all this knowledge and someone who's doing something with it until a storm comes, until life hits, until you're put into a job where you need to do it, until you're trying to be an entrepreneur, or until you're learning something or doing something in real life, or leading a family, or pursuing a relationship, or doing something with your life. And until you actually start doing something, until you're faced with the real world, you won't tell a difference between someone who's just learning and someone who's learning and doing something with it. And so it comes down to education is something that robots really can't replace and AI can't replace. And the fact that ChatGPT can replace so much of education is because it's not really education. And so I think deep down, the education is going to get a lot better. And I can't wait to see the people who do it. I can't wait to see the ways that it happens. And I can't wait to see people get more effective at their jobs and more effective at life, because education is going to have to evolve. So thanks, ChatGPT.